Hey Dan, thanks for joining me. I appreciate it, buddy. Look, when you wrote before I say anything else, though, I gotta say when you wrote this book, The Molecule of More, if you guys can see this, I really when I read the book, Dan, I really thought, does he know me? Did he
A
write it
lot of
for?
people
Did
feel that way.
Yeah, did he write it for me? Because honest to God, I don't read. I listen to more than I actually read. And this book, actually, I think I read once and listened to twice. So it's a huge inspiration for my life. Tell us a little about you. Why did you write the book?
Yeah. So, there, when you do a big project, it's what we call multi-determined. There are a lot of reasons why I wrote it. One was just simply a fascination with dopamine. When I was a medical student and training to become a psychiatrist, dopamine just kept coming up in all kinds of different contexts. I was told it's responsible for schizophrenia, attention deficit disorder, addictions, Parkinson's disease. And I'm like, these illnesses don't seem to have anything in common. What is it that's binding them all together in terms of being a dopamine related illness? So I really couldn't figure it out. It went on. I finished my training and I went to George Washington University as a faculty. And I began to be afraid that one of my students, was going to ask me that question. And as a professor, you're supposed to know these things. So I started doing some research, and what I found was so fascinating. I said, I got to write a book about this.
So basically, has no tie to any personal experience, because like for me, like I read the book and I honestly 1000% related to it. You didn't write the book because of any personal experiences, issues with dopamine addiction.
That was not my initial intention, but as I started doing the research and understanding it from a different perspective, psychiatrists are very focused on illness. We treat sick people. That's our job. And
Mhm.
so we're focused on abnormal symptoms. We don't focus nearly as much on the healthy brain. So a lot of this stuff was actually new to me too. And as a result of it, I actually started making some changes in my life.
You did. What was the biggest one?
Started meditating.
See, I tell people, man, if I could tell them one thing after everything I've been through, after the depths of depression, suicidal ideation, everything I've been through, I would say to somebody that was my number one tool to getting relief from where I was. I'm glad you hit that point because it's so important.
Yeah, it's like exercise for the brain. Physical exercise helps every single cell, every organ in your body. Meditation is the same for the brain. It's very, very good. I realized that I was living my life on dopamine mode all the time. I was not in the present moment much at all. And meditation has helped me with that. This was, I think, like 7 years ago, and it's still a struggle. It's very difficult.
For you?
Yeah.
Is it really?
Yeah.
Okay, tell the Miley Cyrus story. That she read your book, right?
Yeah.
Go ahead,
Yeah.
tell it.
Yeah. So we suspected that celebrities were going to feel like they resonate with this book. And Miley Cyrus was absolutely perfect. She said she read it, she loved it. And she spoke about being up on stage in a stadium in front of tens of thousands of screaming, adoring fans and feeling like this is nothing anymore. This is not doing anything for me, and kind of fantasizing in her mind, gee, I wonder what it would be like to be a doctor and save somebody's life. That would surely be meaningful. And it just goes to show it doesn't matter how high we climb. These dopamine circuits in our brain are always telling us it's not enough. You need more.
And that's my next question because I have it written down here. If dopamine is the molecule of anticipation and not satisfaction, then as a society, how do we not become addicted to the chase and still find inner peace?
That's a great question. And I'm not going to pretend I have an answer for fixing society, but you've diagnosed the problem exactly. People, when they think of dopamine, they sometimes think of the reward molecule, what the pleasure you get when you do something. But if you pay close attention, that's not how it works. You get the most dopamine pleasure when you anticipate something right before it's about to happen. And I don't want to get political. We're a free market society, and that's brought us an enormous amount of prosperity and freedom related to that. But there's a downside to everything. And one is that companies are successful in many cases by promoting dopamine in their customers. They want their customers to be unsatisfied because if you're content and fulfilled, you're not opening up your wallet.
Right. You want to always want them coming back for more. And then, so neurologically, is contentment off limits then?
I mean, it's not what our society is trying to promote because there's no benefit at large for people being content. It's very much of a personal benefit. Helping people be content is in some way a form of service because you don't get anything in return. If you make people unsatisfied, they may be willing to pay you to help them get what they think they need. But if you're helping them to be content, it's a form of selfless service.
It really is.
Yeah.
You did in your book, you talk about the study with the gaming. The gaming companies are literally programming these games, creating these games to hit the dopamine, right? Yes.
There's so many opportunities in video games to trigger dopamine. And there's pretty good evidence that that video games are addictive in young people. They don't seem to be addictive in adults. So I did want to make that distinction. Young people don't have fully developed frontal lobes in their brain, and so it's a lot more difficult for them to control their behavior and resist impulses. And video game makers do capitalize on this to some degree. There's always more achievements. There's always more points. There's always another boss. You got to keep going. And I don't know if you're a video game fan at all, but if you read it, one of the things that people talk about is playing video games they hate, playing video games that give them no pleasure at all, but they can't stop because they've got to finish it. They've got to complete that next achievement. And that's the publishers successfully accessing the gamer's dopamine circuits.
I have a 10-year-old son. He'll be 11 in 2 weeks, the 14th of this month. So I know that I see it. I literally see it. When he gets on when he got on the iPad, when he's a little guy, you take the iPad away, he wants it back. So that was little, and so I monitored it a lot when he was a younger boy. Now he's going on 11, and I had to take the Xbox away, literally, because he'll get on the Xbox. And he has his brain is, I recognize a lot of my brain and his, obviously, right? His brain. So I understand that he likes that stimulation. And when he was on the TV or the Xbox, it comes off of it. It's like someone took a drug away from him, and he gets this bad attitude, starts throwing shit, getting pissed, yelling. And I said, if you cannot control that. And I want to work with him because at that point he doesn't have any other way. So I'm trying to work with him, but at the same time I can't reward him giving him the Xbox for that type of behavior. I'm not the only parent out there dealing with this, but I may be one of the in a small percentage that's actually aware of it and monitoring it and being proactive. So what's your advice to parents out there who are in situations like I am?
Yeah, so it's not a great dynamic between you and your son for you to be the policeman, so to speak, taking away the goodies. Ideally, you would like to help him be able to control this himself. So you might say to him, look, why don't we start small and see how you do about controlling? How about if you play for 30 minutes and you're the one who has to set a timer, and when it goes off, you're the one who has to stop and come to me and say, hey, Dad, I'm done. And if you can do that, maybe next time it'll be 40 minutes and 50 minutes. But I would try to shift the locus of control from the external you to internal.
I like that. I really do. I like that a lot. And I just know that when I bring something like that to his attention, it's almost like he doesn't say this verbally, but it's almost like I don't give a damn. I don't care if I never get it back. That's just that, and that's it. There's no, that's the challenge for me. It's not like, okay, I really want to get on the next, like this Xbox has been gone for almost 2 months now, and he's okay with it. He's
Oh,
like, yeah,
wow.
yeah,
Wow, that's
yeah.
fantastic.
He asked me for it, but it's almost like the punishment doesn't affect him. Like, okay, if I don't get this, I'll go out and I'll do something else. As soon as he gets the Xbox back, I'm going to see how the attitude has changed. I'm going to take your advice for that. So I appreciate that.
Sure thing. Yeah, we hear that a lot with people who have problematic relationships with substances or activities. That it's brutal in the beginning. The first hour, the first day is brutal. After about a month or so, you don't care anymore.
Got it. So this brings me to my next question. My brother and I, same parents, same mom, same dad, same upbringing. He doesn't have the addictive personality that I have. Is it a gene?
Yes, not entirely, but there's a gene doesn't mean you're going to become addictive, but it does increase the risk.
Okay. And then what would trigger that gene to take effect? Like, I know I became a regular drinker. My brother, maybe he was in college, who went through that period of his life, but I became a regular drinker, but I was very disciplined. I would start at 5 and I would stop at 7, but I would drink probably more than those 2 hours than most people drink in a month. So, and that went on for years. A disciplined drinker, I guess you would call it. But what triggers that in somebody's brain? Anybody listening right now who has addictive personality like I have, the dopamine is so fun. It's the chase is just so fun. The reward next, as soon as you get what you wanted, it's on to the next thing is never really enough. The chase is fun, but the reward is very temporary.
Yeah. So, the most important thing is going to be exposure. There are some people, some of my patients who tell me they've never had a drink because a father or perhaps an uncle was an alcoholic and they saw what it did. And they say, I'm not going to play with fire. I know I'm at risk. I'm never going to touch it. That's the biggest risk factor. Second biggest risk factor is your social environment. If people around you are drinking excessively, you're going to drink excessively too, because that feels normal. And that's especially true with women who struggle with substance problems, who are in a relationship with a partner who has substance problems. They're not going to get better until either the partner gets better or you separate them from that toxic relationship. Once it has begun, stress keeps it going. Usually if someone is under stress, they will turn to whatever it is that's triggering their dopamine to give them some form of relief. Now, I should mention, just as an aside, there's a medication that helps people overcome alcohol problems called naltrexone. And
LDN.
one of the things that's interesting about this medication is that it works better in people who have genetic vulnerability. If somebody comes in, they say, I got a family history of alcohol problems, I'm drinking too much, first thing I think about is naltrexone.
LDN, low dose naltrexone. Yeah. I had some fibromyalgia going on in my neck, and they said that might be a good substance for that, good remedy for that, I should say. And then I started taking it, and what I noticed was it kind of made me feel more at peace and in different areas of my life.
Wow, that's fascinating. Yeah.
And I took it for the neck, but it really, there's a lot of great research on it. And I suggest anybody out there definitely go take a look at LDN for sure. So you said something about love and fulfillment. Is it in a society right now where we're swiping and clicking and deleting and always on the phone looking for the next big hit? How do you find love in today's society? Really, because if you think about it, it's almost impossible. But at the same time, I feel it's becoming the new norm.
Yeah. Those dating apps, that's a tough way to find love. When I first started hearing about them from my young patients, I was a little bit envious.
Well, you heard about, you want to cut you off, but there's one out there, Tinder, or what's Ashley Madison? What one were you telling me about last time? Ashley Madison?
Ashley Madison, I don't know if that still exists, but it was an app to facilitate adultery.
Okay. Yeah. And you said Washington, D.C. Tell the statistic about Washington, D.C.
Yeah, so
it's a great story.
This was run by some crazy people. They decided that they were going to release the statistics of users in different cities.
Right.
And right up at the top was Washington, D.C. And that did not surprise me at all. You know, adultery is related to dopamine. People are not satisfied with their long-term partner. They want something more. They want something new and novel. Politicians are high dopamine people. They, in many cases, I'm going to say in most cases, live pretty miserable lives because they must sacrifice everything to their ambition. And you're not going to sacrifice happiness to ambition unless you've got a little bit too much dopamine going on. Same thing is going to put them at risk for cheating on their partner. Not surprisingly, a lot of them were on Ashley Madison.
There you go. And then when I asked that question, I wasn't really necessarily strictly referring to the dating apps, but even on all social media, IG, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, we're always just swiping for the next thing. Yeah. So are you finding people coming to you with this concern, like, hey, I'm in a relationship, but I can't find fulfillment because I'm just not being satisfied from the person I'm with? But really it has to do with them, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. You know, so much about the human brain is about cycles and balance. And so really we evolved to alternate between dopamine in the future, making the future better, and enjoying the present moment. And what happens with these dating apps is that it's always telling you there could be something better out there. No relationship is perfect. You know, we've all been dissatisfied with our partner at times and probably even angry and wondering, is there something better out there?
Right.
Well, if you don't have easy access, you know, you're going to have to stick it out for a while. And the normal cyclicity of life, there's going to be rough periods in relationships. There's going to be wonderful periods. And so that's going to counteract. When you've got this app with which a push of a button, a swipe of a screen, you can get access to something new, that's short-circuiting the normal cycles of life, and it's going to cause problems.
We're heading that way.
We're there. No, we are there. We're not headed that way. We're there.
And it's not getting better. We're not going back.
I disagree with that.
Okay.
You know,
I guess it was a question. Go ahead.
Yeah. So you hear a lot of talk about Gen Z rejecting a lot of this stuff. They're going back to dumb phones because they have the benefit of seeing the damage of this from previous generations. And so I don't think everyone is doing it, but I think there are more and more Gen Zers who are looking at this and saying, this is not the path to a fulfilling life. So I think the pendulum is going to swing backwards. I don't know how much, but we're going to see some improvement.
Really? That's great. Hey, this first I heard of that, because last time I heard Elon Musk talking about this, he says we're in trouble because the human race is not populating anymore. You know, women aren't having babies like they used to have babies, and the population is actually shrinking from what Musk is saying. So tell everybody out there, Gen Z, what's that age group?
I don't know. I think it's somewhere like below age 20, 25, somewhere around there.
Okay.
You know, I agree with Elon Musk, and I write it. Mike Long, my co-author, and I wrote about it in the book about the collapse of people being interested in having children. You know, Romania turned it around. They recently released some figures showing that their birth rates are increasing, and they went to pretty extreme measures to do that. A woman has one child, she gets a 25% discount on her income tax. 250. She has 4 kids. She doesn't pay income tax for the rest of her life. Also, there is social status associated with having children, and people very much respond to social status. So instead of going around saying, I'm an influencer with 1 million followers, and everyone goes, whoa, look at you. I'm a mother with 4 children. I was like, wow, that's incredible.
Right. So I guess, you know, is that going to be incentive for people just to have kids, is kind of, you know, take the different path in life and just kind of sit back and say, oh, I got 4 kids, I'm set for a while now. You know, I mean, I hear what you're saying.
Having kids is very different from sitting back in life.
Yeah, I got one. I have one. I understand that. Right.
Yeah.
All right. I get it.
I remember when my kids were little, my wife really shouldered most of the burden. Once in a while, she'd have to travel for her work. I
Mhm.
would take the day off and stay home with the kids.
Yeah.
It's
Uh,
exhausting. It
yeah, I'm
was like
back to
going
work.
on vacation to go back to work.
I get that. I totally get it. So who is your who is your average, if such a thing, ballpark, who's coming to see you as a patient? Who are you dealing with?
Yeah, so I'm on the faculty of George Washington University, and so that's called tertiary care. And so usually it's people who've consulted perhaps with their primary care doctor. They've tried one or two things that hasn't worked. Then they've gone to see a specialist that hasn't worked. And then they say, all right, I need to go to an academic center because nothing's working. And so generally I get patients who are a little bit more difficult to treat.
Okay. And are they coming to you with issues from your book?
Sometimes, sometimes they do. I've gotten a lot of requests from people who've read my book, and they say this describes me exactly. I want to come and see you, and unfortunately, I have to turn most of them down, just because my practice gets very very full. But in some ways, I'd be reluctant to treat them anyway, and I will tell you why.
Yeah.
They read the book, and I spent I think I spent 4 years writing this book, and,
Wow.
and so the narrator of that book is different from me. They develop this idealized view of how smart I am. They meet me in person, talking off the top of my head, and they're like, "Oh my god."
Yeah, exactly. That's the credit I gave you when I first read that book. I say you're a genius, Dan. And I really I'm of that camp. I really read that book and it resonated to a T that he wrote this damn book for me. That's really how I felt. And I'd go back and the thing is, prior to my deep state of depression, suicidal ideation, chronic, all that shit that I went through for all those years, prior to that, I was so entrenched in the chase, whether it was sex, drinking, working, money, traveling, everything I was attached to was for a high, a hit. I loved the hit, but the downfall was I had to keep doing it over and over and over again. Finally got to the point where my ways of living, the way I was living and my circumstances started to separate. In other words, for the longest time, I could plug in and get to different things and get by. The bigger my circumstances became, the less effective my tools were that I was using.
Coping mechanisms, yeah.
Coping mechanisms fell apart.
Mm.
Everything stopped working. And at that time, I came unplugged from everything and the bottom fell out. That's when I hit rock bottom, because the things I was plugged into, people, places, events, all that shit I was plugged into, it all came undone. And that's when I was out of control. Now I'm facing suicide. Have a gun in my hand, looking in a mirror, with my grandfather's pearl handle pistol in my hand, thinking about blowing the brains out the side of my head on the bathroom floor. And that's how bad it got. It was bad for a period of my life. It was the worst period of my life of all time. However, because of that experience, I'm now completely on the other side of it. And I would never be who I am today if I didn't go through it. So did dopamine fuck me or free me? Well, at first it was really bad. I was fucked by the dopamine chase. I really was. Coming out of it, now I feel so free because I've been through it. I can look at that experience and say, I never want to go back there again. And I have the wherewithal, the experience, the knowledge, and the tools to now live life content without attachments.
Yeah, here's the irony. You almost died, and it's just by grace alone that you did not. You could be dead. And what a terrible experience to go through. And yet, today, I think an argument could be made that you're better off than if you had never had a drink.
True. I
You
agree.
would agree with that, yeah.
I agree with that.
In spite of the horrible suffering that you went through.
Right.
And that's one of the very important truths of life that I think we recognize with maturity, and that is that it's not our successes that lead to growth. It's our failure and our suffering. We have so many tools at our disposal to soften the blows of falling down, to eliminate suffering from our life, to constantly be pursuing happiness, ease, and luxury. But those things don't lead to human growth. And, looking at the big picture, technology, especially artificial intelligence, is rocketing forward at an unprecedented pace. And it is very possible that within our lifetimes, our lives could become very, very easy. And that could be an absolute tragedy.
Oh, I know. That's a concern of mine. And I have a 10-year-old son. So, think about him when he's my age. I we can't put our mind to it. That's
I had this patient who had a father who grew up in a very wealthy family. And he anything he wanted, he had instantly. The guy never had a job, never worked a day in his life. And his son loved him, but he couldn't look up to him as a role model because this man had never matured into an adult. At the age of 50, he was still a child. And if we are not careful, as material scarcity goes away as a result of artificial intelligence and robots and all of those things, we may be at risk of never maturing into adulthood.
ever.
Yeah.
And I was listening to Mel Robbins the other day. I love Mel. You familiar with Mel Robbins?
I'm not, no.
Okay. So she had said in one of her podcasts that people become so addicted to the idea of becoming successful, telling everybody they're going to be successful. They get the dopamine hit by sharing that and never actually go through with the plan. So they never achieve much in life. Speak on that, Dan. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So, dopamine is meant to motivate us. It gives us energy, it gives us motivation, and it gives us excitement about what's going to happen. Unfortunately, a lot of the satisfaction we get from our successes comes from the acknowledgement of other people. I mean, there's good things about that. It binds us together with loved ones, and that's good. But also, we need to be able to take satisfaction internally and just say, I don't care if nobody else knows about this accomplishment. I accomplished it. But what she's talking about is harvesting the dopamine early, telling everybody, oh, I'm going to win this award. Just, another 6 months, I'm going to finish my project and it's going to be, everyone goes, wow, that's amazing. I'm so proud of you. You're wonderful.
Right.
And now it's the point in finishing the project.
They already got the hit.
Yeah.
Without the work, without the effort.
Now, the human mind is complicated. So the takeaway is, all right, don't tell people about what you're working on. No, that doesn't work either, because having the support of people can help you succeed. So there are no easy answers and there are no one size fits all. You got to immerse yourself in life, experiment, fail over and over again, and learn.
What was the biggest aha moment? It took you 4 years to write that book. And through the process, I'm sure you identified with some things you learned some things, discovered some things about yourself. But now looking back, prior to writing that book and to where you are today, what's the biggest takeaway from your own book that you applied to your life? And besides meditation, obviously, but what's the biggest aha, like, oh shit, like I had no idea, but now I can recognize it and I can now work on it. What was that? What would be that? What would that be for you?
Yeah. So when I started writing the book, I thought, like many people, dopamine was the reward molecule. And this was going to be a fun book about sex and drugs and rock and roll, and how awesome dopamine can be. I'm doing the research on it, reading other people's work. And I realized that's not what it's all about at all. Dopamine is about the future. It's about trying to make the future better than the present is. And that's when I realized that I was living 99% of my life in the future. I would work so hard trying to accomplish things. And when they came, I was like, in the trash can. I don't care about that anymore. On to the next thing. And I was just working and never enjoying the fruits of all my hard work. And I said, I think I need to change that. And in some ways, it led to my second book, Spellbound.
Okay. Is Spellbound a continuation of the dopamine hit or not? No, it's completely different.
No, it's not. Spellbound is about the complexities I encountered when I tried to step away from this constant focus on external material improvement, and to say, all right, I think I need to be in the present moment more. Let's see what I encounter. And what I encountered felt a little bit threatening to me for my own psyche, because I had been so dopamine oriented my whole life. And I thought there was some pretty good stuff there.
Great. And would you label yourself or diagnose yourself as an addictive personality type?
I don't think I am. No, I certainly have my bad habits that I find very, very difficult to break. But I don't think I'm at increased risk of that compared to the average person.
Okay, so you wouldn't say you're addicted to your bad habits.
I would say I'm addicted to my bad habits. Yes. Yeah.
Okay. Right. So somebody listening right now, and I'll use myself as a guinea pig and as the example, like I intend to do in all my platforms. When I was going through my process prior to the depression, I was living that life in a bubble, and I had no idea how deep I was getting myself into. Right. When that bubble burst, everything fell apart. I look back at that, and now it's almost like I play with fire. I don't want to get burned again. It's almost like the things that I loved and enjoyed so much, I thought they're giving me happiness. They were not. I'm almost like gun shy of them. Like, I don't want to. I call it contentment without attachment. I try to stay so content without being attached. At the same time, here's the mind fuck that I find myself in. I would find myself striving for something to get there, only to realize it's never been good enough. My mind, when I read a book, like not your book is fantastic. There was no movie to your book, but your book felt like it was my life's movie. When I read a book, Dan, and then I go see the movie can never match the imagination that I created for that story. But the problem is, and what I was saying is that my entire lifetime has been like that. Whereas I'm looking forward to this person, place, thing, event. This next thing is going to bring me that nirvana feeling, that blissful feeling, and it always falls short. So I have to go out and do it again, or get something bigger, make more money, buy a nicer car, have another drink, whatever it was, to try to fill that void. Add to that.
Yeah, I think the classic example of that is buyer's remorse. That it should surprise us how different the pre-purchase and post-purchase experience is. The pre-purchase is dopamine. That's your imagination. It's idealized. It's going to change your life, and everything's going to be wonderful. You buy it, and now it's no longer in the future, and it's no longer in your imagination. It's a real thing. And dopamine disappears, because dopamine only operates when we're thinking about the future. So boom, dopamine is gone. And I think that modern people in industrialized societies lack the tools to be able to shift down into the present moment and enjoy the thing for what it is rather than what it could be.
Or what we expect it to be.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. And idealizing something can be wonderful. It's exciting, but reality is also wonderful. Reality isn't what we want it to be. It's not what we expect it to be, but there's a richness in it that our imaginations can't compete with.
True. And I'm so grateful for the people who don't have the addictive personality. I know plenty of people who can just go out, socialize, enjoy themselves, have a drink. Why is it that there's my type of people who just want to just get into it, want to suck the life out of everything we do, and then come up feeling like, fuck, it wasn't good enough. Now we got to go do it again. It wasn't just one drink. I had to have 6 beers prior to the 2 or 3, sometimes 4 Buffalo Trace and ginger ale that I'd have to have on a daily basis at 5 o'clock, from 5 to 7 o'clock every day. And then it's like, oh God, next day, my body says, you got to take a break. Mine says, no, I needed to have it again. I need more. And then when it comes undone, Dan, that's the hardest part that I have ever dealt with my entire lifetime, ever.
Yeah. The reason why other people can do it and you cannot is because you have different brains. They have a brain that really sets them up for an enjoyable life of contentment and satisfaction. And of course, I'm looking at the extremes and I'm simplifying just for
Sure.
clarity. But and you have a brain that potentially sets you up for disaster.
Yeah.
And that's hard to live with. But at the same time, your disaster prone brain also has more potential for accomplishing important things. And people who have lots of dopamine, um, they have the potential to do great things. They're inventors and artists and composers and writers, and they can change the world, but they're rarely happy. We see these people, they're rich and famous, they've accomplished amazing things, and we say, wow, if only I could be like them, I would be so happy and fulfilled. No, no, if you could be like them, you would be miserable. And this conflict goes back as far as we go. One of the earliest works of literature was the Iliad, and it was about the great Greek warrior Achilles. And the legend has it that when Achilles was born, he was asked to make a choice. He could live a short life full of glory, or a long, peaceful life in which he would just be an ordinary person. And you can guess what this heroic warrior chose. And I think it's an interesting experiment to ask yourself, what would you choose? And then look at yourself. What kind of a person are you?
Mhm.
Are you a heroic dopaminergic type who might destroy their life? Or are you more of a moderate, controlled person who's going to be happy, but perhaps somewhat ordinary?
That's a great point. And you touched on something I want to circle back to. You said I have the brain, a different type of brain. I can honestly say this: the brain I have today, after going through what I've been through and all the work and hours and hours and hours of work that I've done to reprogram the brain, neuroplasticity, neurons, and so on and so forth, reconfigure the brain, I could literally sit here at the table with cocktails all around me. And I'm saying this on a stack of Bibles. I have zero interest in having a cocktail. None.
Oh, that's
None. None. I really mean that sincerely. Like, I know some people struggle with that. They can't go in a bar. They can't be around people who are drinking. It phases me 0%. So whatever I did, shut that switch off.
I don't know what you
I don't know.
did, but I
I
can
have no
tell you
idea.
it must have been an enormous amount of work. Neuroplasticity is real, but it's hard. It's like going to the gym and building bigger muscles. Yeah, your body's capable of that, but it's not easy. And same thing with rewiring your brain. Congratulations.
Thanks, Dan. I appreciate it. Coming from you is a huge compliment. The challenge is now, my thing is, okay, here's where my biggest challenge, if I still have a challenge that's prevalent, it would be this. Okay, so now I'm doing these podcasts, I'm putting out the videos. I really want to help people grow through the process. And I have zero, and maybe this is a fault, I have zero interest or attachment or expectations of how it's going to turn out. Am I going to make a bunch of, am I on Shark Tank selling something? Am I going to make a bunch of money doing it? No, I completely turn that off too, because I know after making a nice amount of money, I remember the first time I made like nearly $250,000, I still felt empty inside. Like, shit, this is not good. I knew I was in trouble. But I was so preoccupied with my lifestyle that I kept busy and distracting myself, drinking more, traveling more, buying more, doing this more, all stuff that was taking my focus off of how I felt. But when that world came crashing down, I was fucked. It was bad. So my point is this. So now I have no attachments or expectations of where this is going to go. Speak to that a little bit, Dan, because I'm almost like, am I setting myself up for disaster again if I don't have an end plan? My focus is to help people. That's my deliberate intention.
Yeah. When I've heard wealthy people speak and answer the question, what should I do to become rich like you? They often say the same thing. And that is, if you want to get rich, don't pursue the money,
Right.
pursue purpose.
Right.
And the money will come. And there's no guarantees in life. It might not, but if it doesn't come, you still have pursued something that's important to you and probably helped other people. So I think you're spot on. Different people approach life in different ways. Some people have these grand long-term plans. I'm more like you. I try to look for the opportunity that's in front of me and make the most of it.
That's a great point. Joe Dispenza, I can credit that man as literally the person who had the biggest influence on helping me save my life. Literally. I went through, I've seen so many doctors, therapists, ketamine treatments, this and that, overprescribed 25 different medications. And then when I came across Dispenza, I really studied Dispenza and listened and applied what he was saying, everything began to change. And right now I'm in a process of making a mini-series documentary, giving him all the credit and a big, huge thank you. I say this to say, he also seems like he'd be in our space, in our camp. Okay. And he's very successful. Then I look at somebody like Kevin O'Leary off of Shark Tank. That guy there is all about, he always says, how can I make money? All he is focusing on money. That's what he's driven by, is money. So how can that personality type, and do I really think Kevin O'Leary is happy? I do. I think he's a genuinely content person. He does. He's actually having a great time. He just loves money. Joe Dispenza, on the other hand, if I were sitting here with Joe, I'd say, Joe, how do you differentiate between you and O'Leary? Kevin's got a purpose of making money. Joe's got a purpose of helping people, but they seem both very content.
Yeah. Yeah. He loves making money. I suspect that if Kevin O'Leary were to do a deal in which he lost a very substantial amount of money, he would be okay with it. I don't think he loves money itself. I don't think he has any illusions that having a ton of money or more money, because he has a ton, is going to somehow make him satisfied. I think for him, that's just a game he loves, and it's a game he's good at. And so he's just playing a fun game that he's real good at.
Yeah. The game of money, the game of making money. Yeah, I'm going to take that. Exactly. Leary, if you're listening to somehow this gets in your hands, Leary, I'm going to talk to you next, buddy. So Dan, I really appreciate this. Let me see. Do I have any more questions for you? I wrote a bunch of questions down so I wouldn't forget them. You know how that goes, right?
Yeah.
Is there anything while I'm doing this, is there anything you want to add?
I don't think so. We covered a lot of great material, I think.
Okay, so on the way out, let me ask you this. Can someone realistically retrain their brain to feel rewarded in the now, or is that just another dopamine-driven goal disguised as presence?
Yes, they can successfully retrain their brain, but but as you know, it requires time and effort.
It does.
Years of, I want to say sustained effort, but nothing human beings do is sustained. Years of coming back and trying and trying and trying. But the process is also very, very rewarding. So if someone is unhappy, they want to change, I would say you can do it, and it will be worth the time and effort.
1000%. And that's why I could never do what I'm doing right now if I didn't have the life experience of everything I've been through. I know where I was at. I know when I was standing in that mirror with that gun in my hand, how bad I felt. I know that. And I know now how amazing I feel on the other side of it all. And I can't keep it inside. I have to share it. Yeah, so that's what we're doing. I appreciate you helping me out with that, Dan.
Thank you for having me on your show.
All right, buddy. Thanks again. Have a great weekend.
You too. Bye-bye.
See you, everybody. Bye-bye.